Thank you, everyone, for coming to the talk, and welcome to Seattle. The weather in Glasgow is no different than Seattle from where some of us are. So today I'm very excited to present our work that examines gender inequity in social media voice forums. This is a joint work with Abhinav Garg, Richard Anderson, and Aga Ali Raza, who is also in the audience. So social computing platforms like these have completely revolutionized how most of us in this room produce, consume, and share information. They play a pivotal role in connecting us and providing us with up-to-date information. And despite their imperfections, these platforms are an integral part of our daily lives and have deeply impacted our society. But these platforms currently exclude billions of people worldwide who are low literate, who speak lower source languages, who live in severe poverty, or those who do not have smartphones and connectivity. And to include these people in the social computing revolution, most technology companies have primarily focused on bringing connectivity to low-resource environments. For example, these companies are using drones, balloons, and unused TV spectrum to improve connectivity. And although these are great first steps, just improving connectivity is not enough because there are several other technical, social, and cultural barriers that makes it hard to bring benefits of social computing to people in low-resource environments. And just to give you a few examples, in India, a high majority of people there use use feature phones. Now, unlike smartphones, it's very difficult to create a standardized feature phone application that work on all feature phones because there are hundreds of proprietary operating systems, most without any API documentation or developer support. Even when people have smartphones, literacy and language barriers makes it difficult for many to use them. For example, 26% of Indian adults who are illiterate find it challenging to use text-based interfaces. Using voice assistant softwares like Google Home, Alexa, and Siri are also very challenging because most Indian languages do not have recognition models and training data. And even if all these barriers are solved, there are social cultural norms that impact the systems or the social media platforms and social computing systems that we build. For example, a high majority of women in India do not have access to smartphones and internet. And even when they own a simple phone, they make and receive fewer calls and use the internet sparingly than men. And these are just few barriers that I've highlighted. A combination of these and several others makes it very difficult to connect people in low-resource environments. But there is hope. To bring benefits of social computing in low-resource environments, several HCI for development researchers and practitioners have used voice-based or have designed and built voice-based social computing services by using interactive voice response technology. So IVR technology is what you use when you call your bank and press 1 to access your account information or press 2 to speak to a customer service representative. So these voice-based services let users call a toll-free number and record voice messages in their local language and listen to messages that are recorded by others. And I'll show you a quick example of how basic service like this works.
संगीत स्वर में आपका स्वागत है। संदेशों को रिकॉर्ड करने के लिए 1 दबाएं। संदेशों को सुनने के लिए 2 दबाएं।
Now, the design of these services overcomes several barriers that I've highlighted earlier. For example, literacy barriers by using users' speaking and listening skills, language barriers by using local language and dialect of users, socioeconomic barriers by using toll-free lines so that even people who are living in poverty can call these services, and connectivity barriers by using ordinary phone calls from many types of phones. And because of their inclusive, accessible, and usable design, these services have been used in diverse domains to provide social computing systems, for example, in health, agriculture, civic engagement, employment, entertainment, and many others. And together, these services have received millions of calls and hundreds of thousands of voice messages from marginalized people. In fact, these services are often the only way by which a majority of people connect with each other, produce and consume information, and get a voice, agency, and equity. And all this is great, but the user analysis of several of these services have revealed extremely low participation of women. For example, CGNet Swara, a service that enables rural people to report and listen to news and grievances, has only 10% female contributors. Sangeet Swara, a voice-based social media service in India, had only 6% female contributors. Ila Dhageso, a voice-based Reddit-like service in Somaliland, had only 15% female users. And similar systems in Pakistan, like Poly and Bang, also received very low participation from women. So in this work, we examine why the participation of women is almost non-existent on these voice-based social computing services. And particularly because these services are designed to be inclusive, accessible, and usable to everyone. And to do so, we focused our attention on Sangeet Swara and Bang, two widely popular services in Pakistan and India. And I'll now describe these two services briefly before I jump into what we did. So Sangeet Swara was a voice-based social media service that enabled users to record, listen to, and vote on songs, jokes, poems in local languages. To use the service, users called a toll-free number, and once the call was connected, they could press 1 on their phone keypad to access how many people have liked or disliked their messages, press 2 to record a new audio message, and press 3 to listen to and vote on these messages. So I would like to quickly show you a demo of what happens when a user's phone call is connected and they press 3. And you can see the translations at the bottom of the screen. अगले संदेश का स्थान है 5.
हेलो गायक बलराम भैया इलाहाबादी. प्रकृत रचैया पवन ज्ञान देवैया पवन पवन ही पवन का संचार है भैया पवन मालिक निरंकार है.
अगर आपको यह संदेश पसंद आया तो एक दबाकर अपना वोट दें. अगर आपको यह संदेश पसंद नहीं आया तो 2 दबाकर अपना वोट दें. इस संदेश को वापस सुनने के लिए 3 दबाएं. इस संदेश को औरों को सुनाने के लिए 4 दबाएं.
So get an idea that it's pretty much like a voice Facebook version where people are recording posts and other people can like, dislike, share, or play it again. Now Bang, a similar system in Pakistan, had all features of Swara, but in addition to let users like, dislike, or share messages, it also allowed them to record audio comments and report inappropriate messages. Swara was deployed in India for 3 months, and it received nearly 25,000 calls from 1,500 users who recorded over 5,000 voice messages and casted nearly 140,000 votes. And the system grew by word of mouth from 73 people to 1,500 people. And Bang was deployed in Pakistan for 8 months, and it received almost an order of magnitude more participation from users, again all by word of mouth. And many users of these services were rural residents. Almost all of them were male living in low-income environments, and a sizable number of them were blind. So given that, now we have a background of the 2 voice-based social media services which we are investigating, to examine reasons for low participation of women on these services, we used a mixed methods approach. We conducted content analysis of over 10,000 messages containing nearly 140 hours of audio data. We asked 3 coders to categorize messages using a rubric to determine the type of message, gender of the recorder, whether the message targets a women user, or whether it is abusive or threatening in nature. We then conducted analysis of usage logs of over 800 users to examine what male and female users liked, disliked, shared, and reported. And we also conducted interviews and surveys with 50 users to examine their user experience, perceptions, as well as benefits and limitations they perceived in using the service. Our study was IRB approved, and we had explicit permission from users to analyze their recordings and usage of the system. So our analysis indicated that only 5% of messages on Swara and only 6% of messages on Bang were recorded by female users. We also found huge difference in the usage of these services, even among the most fervent users, male and female users. For example, this graph shows how top 25 male users recorded significantly more posts than top 25 female users. And we found similar patterns for number of calls, number of votes, number of times they shared the content, or number of times they reported a message. Digging deeper, we found that women on these services faced systemic marginalization and encountered flirts, threats, abuses, and blackmail. And just to give you a sense of what it looks like, on Swara, 98% of flirty messages, 62% of threatening messages, and 46% of abusive messages were targeted at women, who were only 6% of all users. And these discriminations negatively affected agency of women and further limited their participation. So I'll go a little bit deeper into each of these factors to give you a sense of what were flirts, threats, abuses, and blackmail, but I'll encourage you to read our paper for more details. So many male users flooded these services with messages expressing adulation, admiration, and love for female users. Some of them were even forceful in sharing their feelings, and they often recorded messages requesting female users to give them a call back on their personal number. For example, a man recorded the following message on Swara. Saroj, please call me and tell me how are you. You have to become my friend. Where are you from? Where do you live? I'm in love with you. Call me on this number or give me your personal number. It's worth noting that this person did not know Saroj, and the message which he sent to Saroj is actually visible to everyone because it was more or less like a Reddit-like service. Now, some flirty messages also had a sexual undertone, and all female respondents reported excessive flirting as distressful, and on the other hand, male users perceived these flirty messages as nothing but fun and disregarded that these messages created an uninviting environment for women. Often they felt that teasing and pursuing women is the way to impress her. One of them stated, "Men see films and TV shows and think that the only way to gain attention of a woman is by teasing and pursuing her." Many women, on the other hand, engaged in victim blaming and held other women accountable for flirty behavior of men. One of them stated, "Some women don't leave a good impression based on how they talk and what they say. We are also at fault. Not all fault is of men." Now, we found three main reasons why men were threatening and abusing others. Many male users often threatened female users who did not respond to their flirty messages. Female users found these threatening messages extremely discomforting. They felt angry, they felt irritated, and they couldn't do anything about it. One of them stated, "A man posted offensive content when I did not respond to his advances. It is my wish if I want to talk to him. How can he force me? When I could not tolerate the misbehavior, I left the service." Male users also threatened other men who were trying to flirt with or praise the women they expressed interest in. And often these exchanges were abusive in nature and created a really acrimonious environment on the service for everyone. A few users reprimanded those who were involved in such exchanges to maintain the decorum of the service and requested others to not record inappropriate messages both for men as well as women. But often these requests were ignored by those who were creating nuisance, and in fact they threatened even those men who tried to stand up against their behavior. A man who was threatened stated, "I saw some men poorly treating a woman. I raised my voice but did not anticipate the extent of retaliation. They said horrible things." The analysis of votes revealed systemic bias. Most male users often upvoted messages when men were threatening or abusing women, but downvoted messages heavily when women recorded threatening or abusive message as a response to messages from men who were behaving inappropriately. Now, in addition to flirt, threats, abuses, we also have found evidence of blackmail on the system. As I mentioned earlier, several men shared their numbers with everyone and requested women to call them for a one-on-one conversation outside the portal. Some women indeed called those numbers, but when these conversations became uncomfortable or unfriendly, they just stopped talking to the men who they were talking to earlier. But in two cases, we found that a male user threatened to release the number of a female user publicly on the portal if she does not continue one-on-one conversation with him. And when she ignored the threat, he posted her phone number on the service, recorded messages suggesting that they were involved in a romantic relationship, and said negative things to assassinate her character. One of the two women shared, "The man told me that if you stop talking to me, then I'll share your number with the others. When I did not pick his phone call, he recorded a post saying that I am not a good woman and people should stay away from me." Presence of such threatening, abusive, and flirty messages tremendously damaged the perception about inclusivity and safety of women on these services. And as a result, many male users prohibited women in their family and social circle from using these services. One of them stated, "I'll not allow women in my family to get exposed to these abusive messages." In response to these messages, female users stopped recording messages because they were afraid that their participation will be known to their male family members, which would again have negative repercussions for them. And from active contributors on this service, they became passive listeners. Also, these services grow by word of mouth and spread virally, as I mentioned earlier, but because of the uninviting atmosphere on the service, women stopped sharing information about the service with others, which significantly limited the number of new female users joining the service. One of them stated, "How can I ask my family or friends to listen to these posts where men are abusing women and other men? I would be in trouble if my family learns that Bang has such posts. Family members are accepting of these behaviors if a man does it, but not when it is done by women." So there are several interesting implications of this work. Our work highlighted that there are significant secondary barriers to women's digital inclusion beyond the basic hurdles of literacy, connectivity, and availability of devices. Existing work on voice-based social computing services highlight how accessible, inclusive, and usable these services are. And while this is largely true, there is an alternate reality that these services are not welcoming, not inclusive for other user groups like women. While both Bang and Swara empowered low literate people, rural residents, and blind people, at the same time they disenfranchised the rights, agency, and liberty of women on these societies. Our work highlighted how certain user groups within marginalized communities are more marginalized than the other. And as designers and builders, we need to reflect on how our tools and interventions widen the existing gaps in the society. Going forward, using techniques from information retrieval, machine learning, and public policy, we plan to explore multiple ways to make these voice-based social computing services more inclusive, accessible, and usable for women. And some of the ideas which we have is, for example, can we design a gender recognition filter so that once we know that a woman is calling the service, can we give them more incentives? Can we design some simple women-only forums, because that model exists both in Western as well as in Eastern societies? And can we design the services in a slightly different way, where prompts are recorded in female voice, or when prompts explicitly encourage participation from women? Would it help? Or can we design better community moderation algorithms where votes from women are equally represented as votes from men, even when they are not equal in absolute number? So to conclude, in this work, we examined the reasons for low participation of women on voice-based services that are designed to be inclusive, accessible, and usable for everyone. Using a mixed methods approach, we investigated participation of men and women on two popular voice-based services in India and Pakistan. And we found that women on these services faced patriarchy-driven systemic marginalization and encountered flirts, threats, abusive content, and blackmail. And this discriminations negatively affected their participation on these services, limited their participation, and reduced their agency in general to access any digital content. Thank you.
Thank you. We have time. Sorry, my mic wasn't on. I thought I was going to have to shout. We have time for one question while we switch to the next speaker. Do we have a question? Please.
Okay. I wanted to ask if there is any existing system for female-only voice-based communication. You suggested it, but is there anything that is ongoing, just women-only groups or anything like that?
So, not that we know of. Having said that, it's also very difficult to design such systems, because, you can design a system and promote it as, this is only for women, but what stops men from calling the service? So even if you have, some sort of a gender recognition filter, they can always, modify their voice to sound like a female and can get an unauthorized entry into the system. So these are exactly some of the things which we are thinking to build, and hopefully we'll be presenting it in a few years.
Thank you. Let's give Aditya and his colleagues